Welcome to Driving the Cbus, featuring insights from individual contributors from all corners, nooks, and crannies of the Columbus, Ohio region. Our goal is to get to the why of our evolving and eclectic environment, which we all share by the people driving the bus. Today on Driving the Cbus, we welcome Kip Morse. Kip currently serves as President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau of Central Ohio. We're just going to call it the BBB from now on, because that's kind of a tongue twister. He is also founded the National BBB Center for Character Ethics. He resides in Worthington, Ohio, so he's local here in the Cbus with his wife and 3 daughters. So with that, without further ado, welcome Kip Morse.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Hey, I see that you've been here for almost 40 years or over 40 years. Tell me a little bit about how Columbus has changed over that period of time.
Well, first and foremost, I think my big takeaway is how it hasn't changed. And that's really what's neat is that I've spent some time away up in Maine, and I spent some time in Florida. And each time, I didn't know whether it was going to be kind of my destination, whether I was going to be moving out of Central Ohio. And had great times in the places that I was at, but I always, I was even asked, in Northeast Florida quite a few times, "You're not from here, are you?" and so I knew that, okay, this is a little strange because I'm so used to kind of a culture where people would recognize you, people were really friendly, didn't matter what part of town you were in, you'd always run into somebody you know. People had kind of the same values, not that the other areas didn't have good values, but they had the same values, and you kind of, the camaraderie around, okay, what school did you go to, and, the rivalries that existed and that type of thing. You always had that feeling that you were kind of amongst a bigger family.
Gotcha. Yeah, Columbus is a big family. It's a big, small town. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, people say that, and you think, well, that's going to get worn out, or it's not going to be true, and it stays. It's been that way for a long time, and it really hasn't changed. With a lot of the growth, what's neat is that it becomes a lot more socially diverse. You get a lot of, I love the fact that we have the young entrepreneurs and social enterprises and the different aspects coming in that are really kind of challenging some of the norms, and that adds a nice spice to the town.
No, that's great. I completely agree. Columbus is really a group of entrepreneurs. I mean, it's very entrepreneurial. That's why I think we're a great test area for a lot of industry and fast food and all the other things. Microbrewers are now testing all kinds of brews on us, right? They're doing all kinds of different things,
which is enjoyable. And
that's right.
And there's a Test City storytelling event that's coming up. That's really going to be talking about social issues, and so it has been kind of that startup type of a feel. And the more and more I talk to young entrepreneurs, they are so well connected within themselves. And I think one of the tricks is going to be connecting them with a lot of the existing businesses moving forward.
Gotcha. Now, shifting gears on you here, the Better Business Bureau has been around for how many years here in Central Ohio?
98.
Only 98 years.
98 years.
And just give me the 10-word elevator speech if you were to ask somebody, well, what's the Better Business Bureau all about?
Well, we're advancing trust in the marketplace, and we're driving consumers to trustworthy businesses. And so, from there, I can get into a little bit more of explaining to individuals that, our goal is to make sure that consumers and donors have a place to go that they can trust, and they can find out, are they going to have a good experience? Is it a perfect system? No, but it's a system by which we can kind of evaluate what our culture is in our community and give reports on businesses so that people have good experiences.
Gotcha. A lot of folks that are business owners themselves, kind of juggle and wrestle with, should I be a member of the Better Business Bureau? Is that membership, worth worth the time and effort and such and so forth. And I guess I would say to that, just knowing been a member for a good long time in previous businesses and such and so forth, that it is good. But how do you and your people make that value proposition to business owners when they're really counting their pennies, right? Because making a profit is not an easy thing.
Yeah, they're counting their pennies, and that makes it really tricky, because we have always been adamant that you sell the mission. And we do that because the BAB was formed by business people that got around a table nearly 100 years ago and said, we want to protect the free enterprise system. We want to have the conversations around developing the standards so government doesn't come in and have to start to regulate. There's a responsibility in the free markets to be able to do that. We want to tell that story, and that used to get the job done. And like you said, people are saying, okay, now I can get some of these services that I get from the BAB, I can get them all over the internet. Well, yeah, there were a lot of for-profits have been formed based on what the Better Business Bureau was formed on in terms of, can you get trust from different algorithms on the internet? The BAB still is that organization that has boots on the ground, knows their community. I always tell a story. I have an 18-year employee that has been working in the home improvement industry for all 18 years. I mean, she knows the players in Central Ohio. She knows the people that come and go. She knows the really good ones. She knows what those business cultures are. So, that's an important aspect. So we make sure that we keep up with the times, because there's a lot that we have to do relative to making sure that when a consumer is looking for a particular business or a particular service, that they are able to find the Better Business Bureau information. And that's been the kind of the biggest emphasis of late, is to make sure that the business has that value, knowing that, yes, consumers are checking on their company. And 8 out of 10 times, they're going to choose to be doing business with an accredited business over a non-accredited, because they say, okay, the BEB is a trusted third party that's evaluated them based on standards. And if we continue to do that consistently, then there's that value that's built in, and it's our challenge to communicate that to the businesses, because they're counting their pennies.
That's right. Well, on the other side of things too, don't you think that having that advocate there, the neutral advocate, to be a mediary when you have a business and a consumer or a business, it could be B2B, right? It could be
Absolutely.
B2B or
Yeah,
B2P,
that happens that way quite a bit.
B2P or whatever, all the B2Ps. Yeah. You could have all of that. But the fact of the matter is, having a neutral party that's not a regulator, for instance, in your business. Like in my business, we have one too, but it's called the Federal Reserve, and you don't want to have a conversation with them or
Right.
complaints going to them. It's always nice to be able to have someone at least let the customer down and simmer, or the party that thinks they've been wronged, and then you guys can put it into words, because a lot of times they are so frustrated that they can't communicate their words properly, and that gives the business time to address the issue. It also creates a buffering time for the consumer or somebody that's been wrong to be able to just take a break for a second, take a deep breath, and now let's talk about it again. And then you keep record of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how you become accredited, though, is doing the right thing.
How you handle your complaints and how you respond to them. And interestingly, we brought in a consultant about 10 years ago, kind of take a look at our entire process around mediation, conciliation, and arbitration. And the feedback was, get them to the offer of mediation or arbitration quicker. Mediation quicker, really, because the goal was that the longer that we let it sit and kind of bounce back and forth and try to get a resolution, the more entrenched they were in their position, and then all of a sudden they start to get a little bit nasty with one another. If we can move them right along to mediation, our folks are trained in that, and if they don't get the job done, then we do a formal mediation with volunteers from the community. They come in, and like you said, it's that third party. It's amazing when they get across the table from somebody, and all of a sudden they start to say, okay, what is fair? What is right? I can't slip by and try to get something in on this. Consumers and businesses, believe me, consumers are oftentimes are asking for more than their due, and so that third party to evaluate it and say, here's a resolution I think that's acceptable to both parties.
Mm-hmm. Now, come on, man. I mean, we're in a day and age with podcasts and social media and everything else. How come social media isn't the way to go, and Better Business Bureau has kind of seen better days? Tell me why Tell me why that it matters anymore. Why does it matter?
Well, it matters because, again, going back to, you can do a lot of algorithms and try to figure out whether a company is trustworthy. But to have an organization that's been around that understands the community is huge. But with that being said, a lot of what's taken place on the internet is good for the BBB because you don't survive as a nonprofit if you continue to think like a nonprofit. And so it forced us 10 years ago. I can tell you, I had conversations with Angie of Angie's List, and they started by utilizing our reports. I mean, that was the bulk of what started their company in terms of the meat of what they were providing. So that's great. So what we've done is instead of trying to compete with all that venture capital and the money that's going into those different resources, is we're the educational piece. So through APIs and the ability for them to utilize our information, now you'll see we've got hundreds of partners. And so our information is out there, whether they're accredited, their rating, and then connections to their customer reviews. Whatever they want to feed into their data, they can do that. Banks have started to do that. Banks say, I want to find out a little bit about this small business that I'm getting ready to give a loan to. And some banks have said, well, why can't I just set up an API where I have that information built into my reports automatically, in real time. And so we're kind of being utilized as that tool rather than saying, I'm going to go spend $50 million to drive people to the BBB. We're still I think we're around the 700th most visited website in the country. We had gotten up to the 250th, and then things got very competitive, and the BBB really had to not look at ourselves as a federated model and try to get into just bbb.org, understand how Google operates, do the different things from a data quality perspective. And so we're doing a lot that the for-profits are doing, as well as partnering with a number of them to accomplish that same goal.
That's great. Well, great answer. I came at you hard there, Kip. You handled that pretty
well.
well.
We better be ready to answer that. We're not going to be around for very long.
Yeah, thanks for getting real. Well, the other thing too, for the the listeners to remember is that the Better Business Bureau is a way for everyone to put their cards on the table. So through social media, you really only get one avenue a lot of times, and companies take big risk in answering a lot of questions or trying to handle things on social media because, if you're unwilling to come face to face to solve your issues, you're really not interested in solving your issue.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly right. And so I'm run by a board of directors of volunteers, business people, and I have public member slots to kind of represent the consumer side and the law enforcement and so forth. And so when we decided that we were going to go with customer reviews, it was a big topic for a number of years. And our board was adamant, as well as the BBB system nationally, that BBBs were able to actually provide, that businesses were able to provide the response to any kind of a complaint. So just like you said, if somebody wants to try to go out there and bash somebody, the BBB, before we'll even post something, we verify that they were actually a customer, and then we give the business an opportunity to say, yes, that's a customer of mine, and give their side of the story before we even publish it. So when we started doing that, we flipped the switch. I drove home, I got home, and we had 2 reviews. We never announced it once. So consumers were expecting to be able to provide reviews. And about 63% of them are positive. So it's not just about bashing. We want to make sure our businesses have an opportunity to tell the good stories.
That's great. What are some of the pressing issues in your field of? I mean, really, your field is a collaboration field, right? I mean, and now you are the educational arm, as you talked about earlier, is a larger part of what you do with the Center for Character Ethics, and now on a national level, we were on a call together. You were in Washington, and I joined by telephone, I think, right?
Yep.
And we were talking to all the financial institutions that service
The
military installations, right?
Yep.
About reputation risk, and so that type of education. Did they buy into that? What did they have to say after I got off the phone?
Yeah, they did. And then the funny story is that they asked me to speak at the Watergate Hotel in D.C. on ethics.
On ethics, yeah, that's great.
So I started off with that, and I got a chuckle out of them. But yes, they are interested in the Association of Military Banks of America. Are very interested in making sure that those banks have ways of continuing their education around ethics. And so we developed a trust assessment tool that businesses can kind of evaluate their culture. You helped out immensely in conveying that, that businesses gain a lot from doing that and being a part of that. And so, we submitted a proposal to them, and we're kind of waiting to see how much they want us to take on with them.
Oh, that's great. We also ask just some pressing issues in the field that you are dealing with. And the two ones that you actually talked about was speed to market, and I'm assuming that you're talking about speed to market with businesses then, or define speed to market.
Speed to market is, when consumers state they need something a certain way, then we better be able to deliver it pretty quickly, because if we don't, someone else will.
Gotcha.
And so it gets back to kind of the BEB nonprofit federated model. I just got back from DC on the national board, and we spent a lot of time focusing on what barriers do we need to eliminate so that we can get to market quicker. And so making sure that we can do that. And I think that's true with anybody. Everybody's realizing that you can have a good idea, but if you sit on it for 6 months, all of a sudden you're behind the game. And so getting things to market a lot quicker is crucial.
And you also cite deciphering authentic means of gaining trust.
Yeah, so I think that's getting back to, there's a lot of pretenders out there on the internet, and there's a lot of people that are trying to make money by suggesting that that their databases have trustworthy businesses. And we see it oftentimes trying to evaluate, okay, can you actually get a good experience with this this program or this app that might be developed. Making sure that you're utilizing the Better Business Bureau and the resources that we have free of charge to consumers is still critical. And so making sure that we're quick to market with having it first and foremost on Google when you're doing your searches, then that's kind of critical to us.
That's awesome. Yeah, finding ways for people to generate trust has everything to do with ethics, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It seems to me that's people can instantly gain trust with someone if they, for a couple of really simple, basic things like returning a phone call, or admitting that you were wrong, or
speaking the truth with compassion.
Well, exactly. That's right.
You've got to lay it out there.
So I mean, the way that people think about trust and building trust is very unique, because it usually it takes an action of the person that the consumer's trying to gain trust with. For them to gain trust, right? It's not because they have a flashy brochure. It's not because they can talk well or whatever. It's about their actions and how they handle themselves.
Absolutely. I think it's that's that relationship building. That's developing relationships and building that reputation. We talk about it in terms of once you get to that point where you become trustworthy in the community. People are more inclined to forgive you for mistakes because they know that everybody makes mistakes, and you get repeat business and you get referrals, and those things start happening once you've developed that trust within a relationship.
Yeah, the speed of trust we talk about around here quite a bit, and there's nothing better. We tell our clients, especially, we've used you have to have trust. If you don't have trust, there's no relationship. You might as well wash your hands and move on. We find, especially when businesses or individuals have a hardship, if they can come in and tell us the truth, and they agree that we can help them, there's really nothing that we can't do with them. I find that across all businesses. There's always a way to work it out.
Yeah,
there's always a way to come to some sort of conclusion that would be somewhat beneficial to both parties.
And that's really what the BEB is. I think in Covey's Speed to Trust, it was competency and character. And so the two pillars of competency are really covered by the BEB, and the two pillars of character are covered by our Center for Character Ethics. And so you have to have all four of those. And so if somebody comes to you and says, we can do this, but you don't trust them, then they really can't do it. But if they have all those those pillars, then good things can come from it.
That's awesome. Now, you gave it some pieces of advice as well. And the first one is, do not ever forget the responsibility a leader or an owner has in a free enterprise. So that's a pretty sage piece of advice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember back in the 90s, we had, I think we had 3 board members from Grove City. And I had board members that told me that I needed to meet Tiny McComb. And they said, and they knew of him, and they said, you need to communicate what the BBB is all about, because this is what he is all about. And so, I never forgot that. And I think then when I started to get to know you, I appreciated that, that connection as well. And he understood it, and a lot of the business people that have been on our governing board, I don't look for big names, or I look for integrity and business owners that say, I understand the responsibility. Sometimes the work is not flashy, but it's important because it's around integrity.
Gotcha. And also, you say collaborate wherever possible. It's not about you.
Yeah, especially with the work that we have to do.
And the fire truck's not coming for us, so we're okay, folks.
We're good. Yeah, I think collaboration is critical, because there's so many people doing great work, and if there's, I use the autism work that's being done in Central Ohio as kind of a big point, and that is that there's lots of people that are focusing on autism. But there hasn't been a collaboration yet. There hasn't been everybody getting together and say, let's make a huge change in that arena. Where are people struggling, and how do we get them to move in force? And right now, it's really splintered. You got to jump all over, and you have to talk to 20 people to figure out where the one place that you can get help from.
That's great. We've talked a lot about the Better Business Bureau ethics and what you guys are doing in the space, and it's very rewarding. Your chapter, I'm sure, of the Better Business Bureau is one of the most successful in America, would you say?
We're right there at the top. Yeah, we're right there at the top in a lot of the categories. There's a lot of great BBBs in the country, but we like to be a leader in a number of those programs you mentioned. We're real proud of the fact that there's 50 BBBs that are doing Torch Awards. There's about 50 that do Student Integrity Awards, and those are things that were started here in our test city of Columbus.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Shifting gears a little bit about our local environment here in the Columbus region, what do you enjoy most about Columbus?
Well, I love the fact that we have the Blue Jackets. I play tennis, so I love the fact that we have real competitive clubs all around town, and in the summer we can play a lot of tennis. Obviously, we've got great restaurants and great events and festivals and so forth. So, there's never really a weekend where you can't think of something to do and go to a different place. The struggle is making sure that you find a great place and that you don't continually go back to that, because if you do, you think, no, wait a minute, somebody mentions a whole other area of town that you haven't even experienced, and you're like, we need to venture out and go check that out. So there's so many places to go. That's the struggle, is to get out and see them.
Where to go next, and getting out to see them all. I'm kind of a creature of habit, so
right.
I get in a certain routine, and I really like that Blacklick burger at Flanagan's. But yeah, I agree with you. Getting out, and there's so much to do and see. I mean, we really are the envy of the Midwest with what we have going on right now. It's super special.
Oh, when we went out and ate at Oscar's last weekend, and we were up there on that little balcony looking out across it at all the new development
at Bridge Park,
and it
Dublin,
was unbelievable.
That's right.
To see what was happening over there.
Yeah, that's a neat little place there. And now they're building the big bridge. I don't know if it's done yet across the way. Or...
No, but I think the bridge was supposed to come right up to where we were standing, almost there by Oscar's,
connecting the Great Divide right there in Dublin. So now Dublin's going to have 2 downtowns.
They really will.
Really neat. Well, now it's your turn. You can ask me whatever you'd like to ask me. So what would you like to ask me?
Well, I think since you played hardball on that one question, maybe I'll turn the table and say, how would if you were selling for me? I want to get some fodder from you. If you were selling for me, selling the mission of the BBB, knowing what you know and knowing how intentional you are at Heartland about high character, how should I be communicating to businesses? Is it the mission, or is it the value, or is it a little bit of both?
No, I think you guys do a really good job of communicating the value. I bring back an experience that we had together, where I didn't, one time times were tough in 2006 and 5 and 4. We were not following all the other banks into the woods and doing things that they weren't supposed to do. Mm-hmm. We refused to do that. We were shutting down areas of our business that were fraught with giving the wrong advice in the mortgage area and things of that nature. We weren't doing that, but we didn't want to become, we weren't competitive at all, so we thought, what the heck, why be in that business if it's going to be this way? Well, during that time, we were cutting costs. One of the things we cut was our membership to the BBB. Next thing you know, my phone rings. It's, I got a call from you. I got a call from Lonnie Alonzo from Columbus Pest Control, who's been one of your longtime board members. And he said, hey, you need to at least talk to Kip. What are you doing? You need to be part of this. This is why. And, I was, at that point, I was in cost-cutting mode. I was kind of disgusted with the environment that we were in. We saw the train wreck getting ready to happen. We tried to tell everybody. But you guys came out and you really made put these, a lot of the discussion that we've had today on the table and said, hey, you need to be part of this. And by the way, here are 3 or 4 other things that we do. And what we ended up doing from that point is taking a lot of those lessons in ethics and some of the tools that you provide and a survey, the ethical survey, that started a whole nother culture really here at Heartland, where we started to listen to our people and taking in that in our customers and all that kind of thing. So I guess when I'm out there pushing the BBB on the street, to young entrepreneurs, they'll say, well, I don't really have time to do that, or I don't have the money and effort. I tell them they really can't afford not to do it, because they need to have that advocate. And plus, you can really interface these lifelong lessons, building the speed of trust internally so you can emulate it externally.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, because when I hear that, what I do is I invite them in. And so I don't invite them to a website. I invite them in and I say, come over and meet with us so that I can learn a little bit more about you, and I can figure out how to connect you with the established businesses in our community that want to work with you. And we had a meeting this morning with a business. Usually every day someone comes in, we talk to them, and I try to connect them with companies that they should be talking to.
Well, that's great. Well, you guys do a great job here in Central Ohio. Anything else,
Well,
any
thank
last
you.
words you want to give us before we wrap things up?
No, I really appreciate this offer, and I appreciate Heartland being right here in Central Ohio. I think that's tremendous.
Good deal. Well, Kip, you do a great job. Your people do a great job. And Central Ohio is really blessed to have such an organization there representing all of its large, medium, small businesses and representing all the consumers that are here to those businesses. So you guys are real bridge makers, and that's important. That's how things happen. And thanks for driving the Cbus.
Well, thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Kip for his insights and individual contributions to the Central Ohio region, and for helping businesses bridge the gap to having quality relationships and risk mitigation and ethics with their clients. It's a very, very important thing that the Better Business Bureau does. I would recommend it highly to all the business owners and folks that are listening out there, as well as you consumers. It's a great way to get your issues resolved. If you're interested in more information about our guests or our podcast, click the link below. Remember, our region is what we make of it, so let's continue to drive the Cbus forward. I'm Scott McComb. Thank you for joining us.